Just doing an engine change here, and I figured, hey, might as well show everybody what makes the whole thing work, which is the part that gets the fuel into the air, which allows it to get into the engine and explode and make the engine run. This is the carburetor, and pretty much any carburetor, or if you have a throttle body, which is what you use with fuel injection, you will still have the same setup, which this right here, if you look inside, is an air valve. Basically, one side is your normal induction air, comes through the filter and should be cooler air, and then the other side would be your warm air, your carburetor heat, which is air that is going past, usually the exhaust is where it's taken from. There'll be a cuff. In this case, it's on the exhaust pipes from a couple of the engines, cylinders, and it is sucked out of this shroud right here, which has an opening right there where the air goes in, and then this right here is where it then goes down to the carburetor when it's installed on the engine. And that's because there is a venturi. I don't know if you'll be able to see it inside of here or not, but there is a venturi inside that carburetor, and the acceleration of the air causes a pressure drop, which is necessary for sucking the fuel into the engine. But it also, when you drop the pressure, you drop the temperature, and when you drop temperature, you could be right on the edge with moisture getting wrung out of the air and freezing. And when it freezes, it chokes it off, and you'll start to lose power, and then eventually it will stop. And looking down the side of there, we see there's actually like two venturis. You have an inner, and that is because you have that nozzle, and that is your that's where your fuel actually goes in, and you need it actually to be pulling a suction in order for the fuel to get pulled out of the outer bowl, which is why this is shaped the way it is. That's all full of fuel. That drain plug right there will drain the fuel out, and if there's any water in it, will allow you to get the water out. This right here is a little tube that sucks out of the main bowl, and it basically is a pump. And I don't know if there's enough fuel left in this carburetor or not. Oh, we just got a little bit right there. But notice how there's now fuel running down the throttle plate. That's your air control. But your accelerator pump right there, because obviously when you want the engine to accelerate and you jam the throttle wide open, it's going to take a moment for your whole venturi to start sucking harder. So what there is, see the little skinny nozzle over there on the right, that's the acceleration pump, and it has a little skinny nozzle, and it just squirts raw fuel up in there, and it's essentially metered for the amount of airflow this engine has, and that ensures that your engine isn't going to suddenly go wicked lean and stumble and cough. Instead, there's going to be a nice rich mixture of fuel going up into the cylinders for wide open throttle like this is right now. And the moments that it takes for the main jet to catch up, this extra fuel here that just got squirted out of the, no, it's not anymore, inside the bowl now. The main pump is going to catch up, but right now that extra shot it just gave will take care of the engine for those, microseconds that it takes for the main jet to catch up. There is an AD, and I'm doing an annual on this airplane as well, so obviously I have to look anyways. At one point they made these venturis in two halves. I don't know why. Something with manufacturing, easier to install, I'm not sure what it is, but those jets, because they're made in two halves and this engine has a lot of vibration, would wear and get loose, and then you don't get a good seal, and then you don't get good suction, and they don't feed fuel right, and the engine eventually dies. And when the engine dies when you don't expect it to, people crash. And even when it dies when you might expect it to, people crash. The only time you want the engine to die is when you pull the mixture on the ground. Speaking of mixture, that's what this control is right here. This right here controls the flow of fuel to that main jet that's down inside of there, the big one right there. And this right here is what sets lean or rich or anything in between, so that, you know, if you're on the ground and you're idling, you don't foul out your plugs with too much fuel and the lead and whatever builds up on them and it starts to short them out. This right here sets your, see those little holes right there? There's a little bit of a bypass right there for air that can suck a little bit of fuel as well, so that when you're, it's setting up the metering that's going on inside this pump. And notice how clean it is around there. It is sucking a little bit of fuel. That's why it's washing away carbon or whatever, keeping that area clean. And that right there is your idle mixture. So when you're, it's not entirely shut, but it's really close to shut. That's idle. And when it's running like that, this comes into play. And you set this so that if you pull the mixture while it's right down there at idle, you get a, 50 RPM rise. You don't want it over 150 to 75. Just a little blip, and then the engine dies. If it just dies, or if it really rises, you're too rich or you're too lean. And the whole issue with the reason you want to set it like that is so that, let's say, when they're at idle on approach, if it's too rich, it could stall. And if it's too lean, it could stall. And then if they suddenly have to go on a missed approach, the engine's not going to be running and they're going to be in trouble. So these are all factors. That's your throttle. You've got your, that's your one stop right there for wide open throttle. This right here is, use that screw to adjust your idle settings so that basically you want the engine to idle down to, 500 to 700 RPM depending on manufacturer and model of aircraft. You don't want it to go all the way shut, because then what happens is it kills the engine, and you don't want someone pulling the throttle back to idle for descent or flaring to kill their engine, because they do want the engine running just in case. Acceleration pump over there. And yeah, these are pretty simple. They're a whole lot nicer than the Bing carbs that you're going to find on a Rotax, because the Bings, you got to pull this bowl open to go in and adjust the jets for idle and whatever, which maybe on a motorcycle was a great idea, but on an airplane is a terrible idea, and it's a major pain. And of course the Bing carbs located up high on a Rotax, it's just no fun. You need an anemometer to do it correctly because you get two carbs. Yeah, it's still no fun. This right here is fairly simple. You just turn this micro adjustments until you start to hit the right idle mixture, rise, a cutoff, and other than that, it is very simple. Fuel goes in there. This actually, I believe, is a feed for the primer, and this is the main feed right here coming from your fuel pump.